So I am so excited about introducing Megan Lassman, who I called Megan Lasserman for the first 9 months of our friendship. She never corrected me. And I said to her, Megan, I've been saying your name wrong. And she's like, I know. She's like, I figured you'd come to it. I'm like, oh my gosh, what great teaching. This is the type of teaching that I don't always do. Like I want to spoon feed you everything, but to watch somebody just be like, it's cool, like you'll figure it out, like that's master stuff. What I know about Megan is that she just loves to spit truth at every moment. Like she just like really lets you have it. And she is a beacon of authenticity and truth. And I am just really honored to make space for her, because my job in the community is to identify and support leaders. And when you see somebody's special sauce, for me, it's like a real joy to be like, do you know what I know? Do you see what I see? Are you going to be what I think you can be? So we've got another awesome up at bat here for the no. I'm grateful. And thank you, Megan. So we were going to read the promises back and forth.
Yes, we're going to start there. Okay. So we are going to start by reading you guys the 12 promises. And so here we go. Ready? So number 1, we're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness.
2, we will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it.
3, we will comprehend the word serenity.
4, we will know peace.
5, no matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others.
6, that feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear.
Yay. 7, we will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows.
8, self-seeking will slip away. What?
9, our whole attitude and outlook on life will change.
10, fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us.
11, we will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us.
And 12, we will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves.
Are these extravagant promises?
We think not.
Think not.
They're being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them.
Yes. So, the truth is, Megan, I think they are extravagant promises. I think they're incredibly extravagant, especially, coming from where I know we all have come from. And, whether you've been in the program or not, I know that when you're working spiritual principles, you begin to receive these promises and it's like, oh my God. And I know that you had a couple of classrooms that brought you to this program and other programs. And I'd love to have you share that story.
Yeah, so we're going to go big, and I'm just going to go right in and share a sermon that I wrote for a class that I'm taking through SpeakEasy called Maiden Voyage. And before I read it, I wanted to laugh because Beth Gordon, who's one of my amazing teachers, said, so I was going to read this to my class. And I said, oh, nobody can tape it. Like it can't be on Facebook and you have to turn the cameras off. And she was like, really? So Beth, I love you. Hurry. I'm just sharing it, for the world now. We were asked to write a sermon about what makes us cry. And so here is my piece. What makes me cry? As a woman, a human, a mother, a daughter, a friend, it's feeling small, unwanted, invaluable, and unseen. It's constantly questioning if what I'm about to say is even worth it. How sad is that? To constantly have the critic in my head telling me that what I'm thinking is worthless. And so I've walked the world looking to be a carbon copy of what others deem acceptable, timidly trying to find ways to express myself. And when the critic gets too loud, I found the best way to silence her: alcohol. See, for me, alcohol was the only way to feel free, to be able to fully feel like I could just be, but always having to be careful because the relentless critic is ready the moment I open my eyes, ready to watch me step on the scale every morning, revealing with a few numbers what my mental fate would be for the day. Could I feel temporary relief or all out panic? And after I slide that scale back into the secret drawer, it's on to battle the rest of the day. Trying to keep just one step ahead of my critic. And while trying to keep her relentless criticism at bay, I'm trying to consciously raise 3 teenage girls, helping to guide them, hold their hands as 2 of them navigate very mature situations with very immature brains. Raising empathetic, confident, intelligent, articulate girls while trying to find freedom for myself is what makes me cry. It's an all-out war raging in my head, trying to find peace while battling that very same demon I've known since I was a little girl, and wondering why the world won't help me find relief. And when I have found it, say from alcohol, I have clung on with all the strength of a drowning person. And so now at 44, with about 9 years of sobriety and 3 years of very intense couples therapy, I'm just finally feeling like I have begun to step into who I was brought here to be, me. See, Course in Miracles helped me to reconnect with God, learn to understand and practice forgiveness, most importantly for myself, forever believing that I was or am unworthy. I've begun to look at people through a different lens, one of love. I've become more passionate about hearing people's stories and more intrigued by their past. Most importantly, I'm learning to ask what happened to you instead of what's wrong with you. Thought leaders and trauma experts have been echoing this monumental shift in thinking. And this thinking has offered me the chance to stop blaming people and to take a look at the generational trauma that has caused so many of us women to be small and stay quiet. So my work is to continue healing the wounds that have cut so deep, wounds that I've thought at times would kill me. And yet I keep getting back up, sharing my story in hopes that it helps build connection and a bridge to healing for more than just myself.
Okay. I love the fact that in the group you were like, I'm not sharing, turn the cameras off, shut the shade, like keep this down low, keep this on the down low. I can't be that brilliant. And here you are, like flying. So thank you for being so brave. And my favorite part of this is that, you know, if you were to keep it on the down low, it would become stagnant. But you say at the end of your talk, like, I want to be a bridge. And in order to be a bridge, I have to extend. And I have to show up. I have to pay attention. I have to tell the truth. I have to love like crazy. I have to remember to keep laughing, but I have to extend. And there's no way that I can do that if I'm not brave enough to be visible. That is awesome.
Thank you. So Maureen, I just wanted to say thank you so much for inviting me to co-host this series. So we're calling it The Extravagant Promises. And I love the title because when we look at the list of promises, they in fact are extravagant, extraordinary, and honestly, I feel like almost completely unattainable. They were promised to us like really early on in recovery, and I kept hearing them read, you know, in the rooms, at meetings, referred to by, you know, the old timers and the people in the rooms of recovery. But I had very little faith, and maybe no faith at all that they would actually come true for me.
Yeah, neither did I. I was like, those sound awesome. And I felt like a kid with my nose to the candy store, like I'll have one of everything, but I have no money and I'll never get in the store and I'll never be able to afford it. But man, it looks good. Like, yeah. Economic insecurity will leave me. You know, I won't regret the past or wish to shut the door. I mean, just like, those are just 2 of them. And I was like, yeah, that's like too many. And there's 12 of them. So like, that's like a long ass marathon that I don't have the shoes for. Like the truth is I had no place else to go, you know, so I wasn't in it for the promises. I don't think people come to the program for the promises. I think they come because they're in so much pain and that we just want to be out of pain, you know?
Right. So we're going to take the next 6 weeks to talk about these 12 tenets in detail. I first heard them when I began working the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous about 9 years ago. So the promises can be found on pages 83 and 84 in the big book. And they really describe in detail like this fundamental shift in attitude and outlook. Bill Wilson, he's one of the founding members of AA. He's the author of the big book. And he vowed that the promises will come true, quote, if we're painstaking about this phase of our development. Woof, right? Like, to me, that meant that we could have the promises come true, but are we willing to go to any length? Like, can we fully surrender to the program? I mean, just the painstaking, I was like, I'm in enough pain. How much more do I have to go through? These extravagant promises, we think not. They can be fulfilled among us, but sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them. So like immediately after hearing that, I'm like, okay, so I'm definitely going to be in the sometimes slowly camp, right? Like slow burn. There's no big white light moment happening for me, but there's like that glimmer of hope in that statement. So it's like, just hold on till the magic happens.
Yeah. And you can't microwave awesome. Like it just, you know what I mean? Nothing good comes out of the microwave, it really doesn't. And so it's okay. It's okay for it to have that slow erosion, because they're so extravagant that like you wouldn't have the palate for such a rich meal if you were to jump into this. And it's almost like from like the wretched beings of our low level consciousness, we kind of have to like acquire a taste for liberation.
Yes.
So a promise is a graceful agreement that's guaranteed when we fulfill a certain function. And we read a quote that we really liked. People with good intentions make promises, and people with good character keep them. So
Right.
we might not have always had good character. And when we came to the program, we got to see our character defects, which again, like nobody signs up for that. Like, tell me all of the things that are wrong with me. And so we get to look at our character defects, and we get to experience a transformation, because we're not looking at them to hang ourselves up. We're looking at them to liberate ourselves. And you have to look at it in order to heal it. You have to see it to order to free it. I think you said something about healing and revealing. Like you kind of have to reveal it to heal it. And as long as these character defects lay in our blind spots, like there's no hope for us.
Yeah. And I would even back it up a step to say, what is character, right? Like if you're going to tell me what my defects are, what is character? So I love this author and organizational psychologist. His name's Adam Grant. He's amazing. So he says, personality is how you respond on a typical day. Character is how you show up on your worst day. It's easy to demonstrate fairness, integrity, and generosity when things are going well. The real question is whether you stand by those values when the deck is stacked against you. I just think that's so awesome.
I do too. And in A Course in Miracles, it speaks to honesty. In 12-step, we talk about rigorous honesty. And in 12-step, we talk about honesty in the realm of consistency. Mm-hmm. So like what I think, what I say, what I feel are going to be in alignment. And I'm going to show up that way, whether I'm at the chapel or at the bar. Mm-hmm. I'm going to speak my truth wherever I am. And so that's harder to do, but I know that if we begin to practice these principles on the easy hour, like they follow us through to the harder hour, because we put some skin in the game prior to the boat getting rocked. And you might find like your friend will be giving you the racket, or you'll be experiencing some sort of racket, and you'll feel yourself anchoring down into some of the principles that you've been chewing on, and you'll find yourself saying things you didn't know that you knew. And so it does get easier to stay consistent when the cage gets rattled. I know in my old life before having a spiritual program, the cage would get rattled and I'd be the first one to fly. I'm like, I'm out.
Immediately, this is too much.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the first two promises. So the first promise says we're going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. Ooh. Who doesn't want that, right? So again, I'm taking this class through SpeakEasy called Maiden Voyage. And in the workbook, there's this beautiful quote. It says, a victim consciousness and the stories that support victimhood live at the bottom of the totem pole. These thoughts, stories, and beliefs perpetuate the feeling of being lost, feeling less than, and not fitting in, and leave us feeling that we need to prove our worth to the outside world, right? Oh my God, I love being the victim. I love it. It's like my happy home, you know? And there's no freedom or happiness in feeling the victim.
Yeah, I think we love to play it because it's so easy. All we have to do is pout and point, like it's there. It's like a super easy role to play. And in Hollywood, I got to play too many victims. But if you play the victim, then you'll have to play the hero and you'll have to play the villain. Like you can't skip any of those because there's sort of like this broken triangle, the Bermuda Triangle. And when we move out of our victimhood, what's required is we take 100% responsibility for what our life is. And that's sort of like a large pill to swallow, that we take 100% responsibility and we start to go like, what is my part, and how do I take care of my part of the sidewalk? I remember hearing that in the 12-step, like, what's your part? And I'm like, I don't have a part in this. This happened to me. That guy's an a-hole. Did I have to explain it again? I will.
We're not talking about anyone else. Yeah, it's so true. It's like the victim, the villain, the victor, like that little triangle is a very comfortable place for me to be. You were going to tell a story, I think, about maybe your sponsor.
Well, I did. I had the experience of telling the victim story one too many times. And the good news about being in the consciousness of people who are actively working on their consciousness is that you get polished by people because they will not co-sign your bullshit. And so like this sponsor said to me, like Beth said to you, like, really, you're going to turn the shades off when you're so brilliant? Like my sponsor said to me after I told the story, like for the 1,000th time, she was like, when are you going to stop playing the victim story? And I was like, what? I was so indignant. I was like, you are now part of the problem. I cannot believe you're not co-signing my bullshit. Like you're supposed to be my sponsor. Like you're supposed to be nice to me. And now you're horrible. And I went home and I slept. I got a good night's sleep. I really promote getting a good night's sleep before you make any decisions if they're big ones. And when I woke up the next morning, I was like, oh my gosh, she's going to tell me the truth. I got to sit closer to her, and that was a step in my spiritual maturity. When I didn't want to just keep myself safe in like the toxic story of, everyone who was going to co-sign me, but I was willing to like really hear the truth. So
powerful.
Yeah.
Powerful. Okay. We're moving to the next one. So promise number 2 says, we will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. So for so many of us, that past includes trauma. It's a term that I've completely misunderstood my entire life. I assumed that when people spoke of trauma, they were referring to like emotional and physical abuse, like very significant events that caused tremendous suffering. And so when I was in rehab for alcohol addiction, one of my counselors said to me that I used because of the trauma that I had endured. And I was completely shocked. I couldn't immediately think of events that would be characterized as traumatic for a long time. And then I stumbled upon the work of this renowned addiction and trauma expert, and I love him. His name's Dr. Gabor Mate. Oh,
you have a lot of fans.
Oh my God. Yeah, I'm getting them all in here today, Maureen. So he defines trauma as a psychic wound that hardens you psychologically, that then interferes with your ability to grow and develop. So the trauma pains you, and now you act out of pain. It induces fear, and now you're acting out of fear. Here's the most important part for me. It says, trauma is not what happens to you. It's what happens inside of you as a result of what happens to you. There's a woman named Sarah Whittles Wax, and she has a podcast. I love podcasts. It's called Last Day, and it's about her brother. He died of an opioid overdose. And so she started this podcast to talk about addiction, and she had him on, and he says that trauma is a wound and that people can be wounded in all kinds of ways, right? Especially a sensitive child, because his feelings are not understood and his needs aren't exactly met. So trauma is not just a wound, it's a wound that's not healed.
Mm.
And people then become separated from their feelings and they lose their sense of security when they experience trauma. And I'm like, oh, that's me. I completely relate to the sensitive child, right? Like my therapist was like, super feeler, like I'm a super feeler. My daughter Ruby's a super feeler. Ultimately, I think that's what led me to addiction. It was like, can we stop feeling for a minute?
Yeah. Yeah. And whether you're a super feeler or not, every time if you don't heal the trauma and your thoughts and the meaning you've made up about the trauma, you will continue to re-wound yourself. Even just not just in drawing those classrooms to you again and again, but every time you think of it, you will have a toxic rush through your body.
Mm-hmm.
Once it's healed, you no longer have that toxic rush. So, looking at it helps to heal it.
Mm-hmm.
So
wait, can I just add one more thing? Because
absolutely.
there it goes. If everybody's out there like inhaling into a paper bag, right? They're about to like pass out from this. Gabor goes on to say, guess what? Like it didn't begin with you. And so like, if you're thinking about, oh my God, what have I done to my children? It didn't begin with you. And then if you're looking to point the finger at like your parents, it didn't begin with them either. This is generational stuff we're talking about here. So you don't get to fall back into, or I should say, I don't get to fall back into being the victim and being like, whose fucking fault is it?
Yeah. Not only is it generational, but it's universal. You walk into a room in the 12 step, you're like, wait, were you reading my diary? Like, right?
Yes. That's like when I first walked into a meeting and didn't yet have the strength or courage to open my mouth. And somebody gets up there who doesn't look like me, who's at the same age or race or gender, and my story comes out of their mouth.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing when we say like God's doing for us what we can't do for ourselves. So these promises don't just slip in the back door. There are some steps that we take, and whether you're in the program or you're in any spiritual philosophy, using these steps are going to be beneficial to you. And the first one is we admitted that we were powerless over addiction, alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Like that is the place where we surrender. We just like give it over. And it's so, you read the surrender experiment, you talk about Buddhism, you talk about all of these, opportunities to surrender. And it's not, we're still going through life like this instead of like this. So that first step, these steps they're going to take a little bit of effort to just continue to say like, am I surrendering? Am I surrendering the story? Am I surrendering the meaning? Am I surrendering the victim? Like these are all things that need to be let go of. We admitted we were powerless over fill in the blank. It could be shopping, it could be alcohol, it could be, surfing the internet, and that our lives had become unmanageable.
It was really hard for me to understand that my life was unmanageable.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found Course in Miracles and the whole even though I was in a 12-step program and doing it so well and, having that perfectionism, it wasn't until I found the Course that you were like, why don't you stop coming to every situation like this and just open your arms? That's the like, wow, you're so unmanageable, Megan, that you need to like take a breath,
Yeah. And I think some of that comes from the fear that like, don't take my little that I have.
Yeah.
Like this has gotten me this far. I'm holding on, like I'm fine. We go through life being like, I'm fine, like this is good, like don't look over here, like I'm just barely holding it together, but like I'm holding it together, so it's like spit and duct tape, man, when it's like you could have a much more expansive experience.
Yes, and I feel like you always say to me like, hey Megan, why don't you stop rearranging chairs on the Titanic? How about that? Right? So true. So then that leads us right to the second step, which is now that we have admitted our lives are unmanageable, can we come to believe in a power greater than ourselves that could restore us to sanity?
Mm-hmm.
Oof. I didn't like to hear that I was insane. So that that's a big one to admit. So
But how about a power greater than ourselves? Did you trip over that one at all?
oh God, hated that. That's scary. Because then I knew the word God was going to creep in there somehow. I just knew it. That's what it was setting us up for. So
Yeah, exactly. And that the relationship that you have with a higher power when you get through the thresholds of these doors or any program really, and the one that you come to find, like when they said a God of our own understanding, I was like, wow, that's so expansive. Like, how do I understand God? And is it really an appropriate understanding? Like, to get to question those things was so generous.
and to get to have your own conception, like what? I
Yeah.
never knew that.
Yeah.
Never knew that was possible. So that's unbelievable. Okay, so I wanted to share with you, this is one of my favorite quotes. So talking about that, right? Trying to find the unmanageability, right? Or realizing that our lives are unmanageable. It made me think of this quote from Brene Brown. And she talks about midlife. But what I really think is it's for all of us, it's that finding that point where we are ready to surrender, where we come to realize our life is totally unmanageable. And I wanted to share this quote. So this is from a podcast that she did celebrating the 10th anniversary of her book, The Gifts of Imperfection. She says, midlife is not a crisis as much as an unraveling. Yes. Okay. So midlife is defined as the time in your life when the universe gently places her hands upon your shoulders, pulls you close in, and whispers in your ear, I'm not fucking around. All of this pretending and performing, these coping mechanisms that you develop to protect yourself from feeling inadequate and from getting hurt, this has to go. Your armor is preventing you from growing into your gifts. And I understand that you needed these protections when you were small. I understand that you believed your armor could help you secure all the things that you needed to feel worthy and lovable, but you're still searching and you're more lost than ever. Time is growing short. There are unexplored adventures ahead of you, and you can't live the rest of your life worried about what other people think. You were born worthy of love and belonging. Courage and daring are coursing through your veins. You were made to live and love with your whole heart. It's time to show up and be seen.
Megan, Lassman, you just showed up and we're so seen. Great. You did it.
Oh,
5 more weeks with you. So that's awesome. So now it's time to share your courage, strength, and wisdom, or whatever it is that you want to share. Questions and concerns are also welcomed. I want to put Megan on up and she can field some of these questions. And if you do have a question, a thought, or something to add to the conversation, just put your virtual hand up so we can see you. Sherry Ransom.
I just want a clarification. I've always thought of AA as Alcoholics Anonymous. So are you telling me that if I am not alcoholic, I can use these 12 promises? I don't know if there's a clarity there.
Oh, hell yeah, you can use these 12 promises if you're,
okay.
and we all have dis-ease, we all have some, if you have any even slight alternative altar that's pulling you from God, seek first God, you probably have an addiction. That's an obsession or an addiction. And I know we're using a broad, swash with it, but, can it serve everyone? Yeah. Did you want to share on that, Megan?
No, I was just going to say, absolutely, Sherry. Without question, they can. Definitely. No, you said it all, Maureen.
Yeah. And, sometimes the thing is that there's so much stigma around alcoholism. I mean, there's not as much as there used to be, but that that the gold of it has been shrouded under stigmatism. And it's just like not okay to like hide the best stuff in the back room. So yeah, absolutely. Great question though.
Hey, my question is actually for Megan, but you can both answer if you like. From the time you spoke with the Maiden Voyage movement and today, like where was the shift that you decided or you felt that your greatness came up, you know, that your smallness wasn't serving you anymore? So where did you see your brilliance, or when did you see it, and how did you recognize it?
Wow. Okay. So I don't know that I would actually say that I recognize it, but I will tell you that I continue to get classrooms or be in classrooms where, like Maureen was just saying to me the other day, open your mouth, you know, like you're going to continue to be confronted with situations that make you very uncomfortable, Megan. When are you going to start to do something about it? Right? When would you like to step into your truth and open your mouth? And I am, you know, tiptoeing there. I'm definitely just, it's a journey and I'm trying my best. And it has just been something that I've always been grappling with. It's a classroom that's so old, you know? So step into my brilliance, no, but trying, trying to be, and I will say that I am so drawn to people that are vulnerable and authentic and just unafraid to say their truth. And so that is what I'm aspiring to do.
Well,
I think we're all healing this for each other. So it's like, but practice really does help erode the resistance against speaking up and showing up. And when I first started, even as a young kid, I was so shy. I had so much stage fright. Like I was so shy. The fact that I went out to Hollywood to be an actor is just like, I think even in those roles, I like hid underneath the roles. You know, I think it was another way for me to hide. And it wasn't until I came to 12-step that I actually started becoming more visible, because I wasn't hiding beneath someone else's script or story for me. I was telling my truth. And when that happened, I would cry every time. Like every time I raised my hand, they just started sending all the tissue boxes to me. And I felt so much shame about it. But that was just how I would beat myself up on the way home. Like, I'm such a baby. Why can't I ever talk without being emotional? So then I started to embrace it and just say, I'm Maureen Muldoon. I laugh, I cry, and I curse, and I don't apologize. And then just putting it right out there in the light helped me to heal it. And so it's I think it's practice, you know, progress, not perfection. But great question, Deb and Donna.
absolutely beautiful, and you're both absolutely brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan Lassman. Gosh, that was awesome. Get to experience the rest of the promises together.
Yes, so excited.
Thanks for everybody who shared today. And again, please share the message that we'll be doing this series. I think it's going to be super helpful. And we have some 12 steps to miracles during the week. If you want to go a little bit deeper with the 12-step community, those are pretty cool places to show up. So God bless.